The Prime Minister says today that despite the government's commitment to £12 billion in welfare cuts, he is a one-nation Prime Minister whose government will, and I quote him, improve life chances for all. But there are figures coming out this week which are expected to show that child poverty is increasing. Let's argue it out with Dr Samantha Callan of the Centre for Social Justice, established by the Work and Pension Secretary in Duncan Smith when he was in opposition, and Alison Garnham, who is Chief Executive of the Child Poverty Action Group. Dr Callan, I think the figures show that in the 10 or 11 years up to 2010, child poverty was decreasing. That has now gone into reverse. Why?
Well, first, let me just say there are two big problems with fixating on income measures alone if you are serious about tackling child poverty. The first one is income just does not paint the fullest picture. For example, previously a child could be just over the line because their parents were forced to work fewer hours because of the kind of cliff edges. If you work certain hours, you'll lose massive amounts of tax credits, etc. But also, very important, you could be just over the line and not have a father in the home because of these weird incentives to live apart because of the old benefit system. That's the first reason why it's such a problem, just focusing on income. Second, as I say, child poverty does matter. We have to tackle it, but we have to tackle the root causes of poverty. So just looking at money, having a welfare-focused solution, which is kind of what's underneath the kind of critique, is we're not looking at poor education, serious personal debt, very importantly, family breakdown, drug and alcohol addiction, poor mental health, and welfare dependency. We've just got this very narrow, very poverty-stricken view of poverty when we need to have a much richer view so we can actually tackle it.
You say poor mental health. I mean, the government's record in investing in mental health is not exactly world-beating.
Well, I'm not here to
I know, but you just made the point that,
yes.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I would defend the point in that if we want to tackle the root causes of poverty, then making sure mental health spending and tackling the root causes of mental health has got to be high on the agenda.
Alison Garnham, just your reaction to that and your position from the CPAG.
Well, of course, child poverty is about more than just income, but the income figures are incredibly stark. We're expecting to see a rise of about 300,000 more children in poverty and 700,000 by 2020. And we know that that's devastating for children's outcomes. There's mountains of research that it's low income that's most strongly associated with children being behind in education, having poor health, low self-esteem and so on. And the cuts that we've had to date have fallen predominantly, 70% of them on families with children. 60% have fallen on low-income working families. And we know today that 2/3 of children in poverty live with at least one working parent.
Do you accept, in that sense, Dr Callan, that the economic circumstances in a household are important? They may not, as you've argued, tell the whole story, and they may not simply be the cause of the social problems that come from all this, but they are a very, very important factor.
Absolutely, and we need it's a one-nation speech. We need a much more society-wide response to this issue. So it's about families, it's about the educators, it's about employers. We need a living wage. We need the moral pressure, the moral temperature to rise on this issue, because for far too long, employers could give very poor wages, knowing that the tax credit system would take people over the line, as it were. Now, just on the subject of tax credits, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, the flagship poverty-fighting organisation, they said that a tax credits approach to poverty is running into the ground in the mid-noughties.
Do you agree with that, Alison Garnham?
I think the problem is that tax credits have been taken away from poor families. As I say, low-income families are predominantly people in work. I mean, I think we need to look at actually what's happened to the record. Since May 2010, according to Professor John Hills at the LSE, if you model tax benefit changes, the whole of the poorest half of the income distribution is now worse off, and the whole of the richest half is better off, bar the top 5%.
May I just point out that after the recession, there was this kind of massive increase in children over the line of about 300,000 because of just the way the wages were depressed across the whole of the country.
But do you accept what Alison Garnham is claiming is a consequence of government policies since 2010, or not?
the figures are the figures, but what I'm saying is by fixating on these very narrow income measures, not looking at the boost to children of their parents being in work, not looking at the boost to children of tackling family instability, that we're in danger of just putting all the attention in.
But let me ask you both to just say, if you were going to produce what the Prime Minister calls in that famous old phrase, one nation, and bridge the various gaps that are there, which everybody agrees are very damaging, what prospectus do you have, Alison Garnham, first of all?
First of all, we need to look at giving children a triple lock like pensioners have. So children's benefits should be kept uprated in the same way as pensioners' benefits are. Secondly, we need to tackle things like high childcare costs, high housing costs, and also the fact that so many families are very low paid. So a lot of these factors are structural and about our economy, but we can't ignore what's happened to family incomes.
And Dr. Callan.
Well, I think I've mentioned already that families make or break a child's life chances. Whether a child's going to have a good experience of growing up, it's all about people getting the help they need at the point they need it. And so we've talked a lot about family hubs, local community-based help with relationships, with things like the hassles of teenagers, not just the tiny babies, but also we do need more housing. We need government to help create the conditions for more housing.
Samantha, don't you think more cuts is going to lead to a more divided society, though?
We need the welfare system to mimic the world of work.
We have to leave it there. I should say that the DWP in Douglas Smith's department said this government is making significant progress in tackling child poverty. There are 300,000 fewer children living in relative poverty since 2010, and the number of children growing up in workless families is at a record low. That is the government view. Dr. Samantha Callan from the Centre for Social Justice, thanks, and Alison Garnham, Chief Executive of the Child Poverty Action Group.